Hello everyone, thank you so much for joining me today. If you're just returning, you're welcome. For those of you who are new, thank you so much. I hope you can consider subscribing so YouTube will suggest or make suggestions of this video to others. Please share, leave your comments. I would appreciate that. Thank you very much. Okay, so this second part we will be looking at the literature review as a methodology in its own right. If you haven't watched the first one, I'd encourage you to please do so because we've covered traditional review in the first video already. Brilliant. So let's go on. Well, like you would have already heard in the first video, your traditional review requires you to cover topics or different articles for a particular subject matter you're researching on. But using your literature review as a methodology in its own right means you're doing a secondary research, okay? As we're going to cover in the methodology section, the subsequent videos really, the literature review as a method in its right is a secondary research because you're not collecting primary data. You're collecting primary data like doing surveys, questionnaires, observations, fieldwork, experiments, all of those will be classed as primary research. Okay, so think about it like this. Let's say you are a police officer. You went to the scene of an accident. You saw when maybe you meet people that saw a man hit another man, and you ask them about the accident. They give you information. You take notes of those, and then you carry on further investigations. That's primary research. You were there. You did the search yourself. If, however, you're discussing accidents on the roads and you're looking at what your colleagues have done in the past and recorded, that's secondary research. In similar vein, if you're doing the research yourself, asking questions and collecting data from people, yourself directly, that's primary. If you're just reviewing what others have done, that's secondary. Okay, so let's go right into it. Now, for literature review as a methodology, you could do it in different ways, but we'll start off first with the first one, which is the systematic literature review. And this one is most, I'll think, more prevalent than the others, okay, because it's really what most journals will publish because it's really systematic, the method is clear, and is well structured as well. So with the systematic literature review, you need to structure your work because it requires strict requirements. It has strict requirements. So basically, let's assume that you have your university library, online library, you're on the library right now, and then you key in the keywords that you want to study. For example, the gendering of leadership, right? You need to let us know in the methodology section how you collected your or chose your particular articles you're reviewing. So the first step was to key in gendering of leadership, and maybe 1,000 articles popped up. You note that down. Then you key in another keyword. Maybe you're looking at the context of Africa or the UK or whatever your next keyword, is supposed to be. Now that will be driven by your research aim, of course, your research questions, your objectives. So please do take note of that. All right, because with this systematic review, you really focus on a narrow question or objective. It has to be well targeted. Okay, so when you're doing this search on and selection, you need to have your inclusion or exclusion criteria. So you may decide to include only articles that were written in English. You could decide to exclude articles from other departments. So you want to focus only on management and business, for example. You may want to exclude books and conference proceedings. You may want to focus or include only journal articles. Whatever you do, you need to let us, your examiners or people reading, your readers, know how you came about those chosen articles in general. So this systematic literature review is really good because it helps you to make useful contributions. Okay, it can inform policy and practice, like Snyder rightly said. Now, how can you make useful contributions? Systematic reviews could help you to synthesize evidence, investigate the effects of a particular subject or factor, and even determine if there's an effect that is constant across different studies or if it's changing. It could also help you to discover areas that can be improved on, areas for further studies. So maybe you've done this gendering of leadership and you found that people 20 years ago, 2 or 3 decades ago, We're not open to the idea of women being leaders. However, things have changed now. People are more open. Is that the case across the world? Is that the case in some areas than in others? You make quite clear what you found within your study. And it could also help you to compare contexts as well, like I've just said. Now, when you come to analyze the results, you could do a qualitative systematic review where you're analyzing and comparing results from qualitative studies, or you could also do a meta-analysis. This one is more quantitative. Okay, so using statistical methods of combining the results from the different studies. Now, if you're doing a qualitative, you could use thematic analysis as well, content analysis as well. Okay, right. So in summary then, for your systematic review, within your methodologies chapter, you need to make clear how you got the materials, these journal articles that you've chosen. Is it a 4-star, is it a 3-star? What are the themes that came through? How are they aligned to your objectives? It's very key as well. How are you going to analyze the results? All of these different elements. And I would advise that please do read other articles as well, other literature, systematic literature review within that field. It will be quite useful for you. Okay, fabulous. And then we have another one, which is a semi-systematic literature review. Now, the semi-systematic is quite like the systematic, but somewhat different, of course. So it's a more narrative approach, okay? And it's for topics that were conceptualized differently, topics that were studied by various groups of researchers within different disciplines, and you're just trying to bring all of that together. It's more flexible, if you may, than the systematic one. Okay, now you could consider using this, especially when you're doing a research in a field that has progressed over time. So you could do a systematic literature review on the gendering of leadership because the subject has progressed as well. You could also use it, I mean, different topics that have been developed across research traditions. You could also do that using this semi-systematic literature review. Your analysis can be done using qualitative methods, so content and thematic analysis, like I mentioned before. And you could use the semi-systematic literature review to also detect themes, common issues within the literature, within a particular discipline, within a particular methodology. And you could also use it to identify other components of any theoretical concept. So you can see it's way more flexible than the systematic one. And of course, your objectives and questions or aim can drive this as well. And the third one we have is the integrative literature review or a critical review approach. It's somewhat like the semi-structured, but the focus or purpose is quite different. Okay. Now, the aim of really doing an integrative literature review is to kind of examine and synthesize the literature so that you can have new perspectives. All right, you want to reconceptualize a new idea, you want a new framework to emerge. This could be a good reason to do an integrative literature review. Another important element is that will help you to evaluate and summarize a broad research field or even different research areas. So maybe you want to draw on research from psychology, from sociology, from philosophy. An integrative literature review will be really good in that regard. And that's not to say you wouldn't tell us how you got or came about those chosen articles. It just gives you a layer of flexibility to combine or have a broader scope in your inclusion criteria, going beyond business and looking at other fields as well. Another good point about the integrative one is that it allows you to cover mature topics and new topics. For the mature topics, you can capture an overview of the knowledge base. You can reconceptualize the subject after you've done a very good review. You could also expand the theoretical foundation of that topic. For a new subject area, you can help you to create a new concept and also theoretical models as well. Overall, you just need to be a bit more creative. Your ability to combine different perspectives from the different fields or research traditions will come through for this to actually be really effective and useful. So these are the three standard methodologies I wanted to cover today. If you've got questions, you can leave them in the chat but obviously do look at other examples that'll be very useful for you. Now, these are great resources here that you could use to learn more about reviewing the literature. There are great textbooks you could also read for yourself as well, obviously, and you need to reference that. Now, there's nowhere you do a literature review without having references. We've already talked about that in our previous video. Okay then, so this is it in summary, the systematic, semi-systematic and the integrative literature review. Hope it's been useful for you. Thank you once again, and remember, here we start from excellence. Thanks a lot. I'll see you next time. In the next video, we'll start looking at research methods. Okay, thank you, great ones. Take care. Bye.